Texas, or Tejas, was part of that Spanish-Mexican world. But regardless of how long Mexican-American families had been in the United States, they were often seen as foreigners in their own land.
One of 8 children, Idar grew up in an educated middle-class family with a strong sense of social justice.
Her father was egalitarian in terms of women's rights. He believed that women had a right to have a political voice, and he was very proud of Jovita Idar, proud of all of her knowledge, all of her education, and her daring.
After attending Protestant schools, Idar became a teacher in 1903.
Ethnic Mexican children had no choice but to attend these schools that were second-rate in every way. The buildings were falling apart, they didn't have school supplies, and the history that they were learning taught them Mexicans were the bad guys, and Davy Crockett and other Anglo-Americans were the good guys. Jovita Idar quickly grew frustrated with the lack of resources and support.
Mexican children in Texas need an education. But if they are taught the biography of Washington but not Hidalgo, the exploits of Lincoln but not Juarez, that child will be indifferent to his heritage.
And that's when she decided to join her father and her siblings in human and civil rights activism through journalism.
Idar became a reporter for the family's weekly Spanish-language newspaper, La Crónica.
As muckraking journalists, they took on racism, they took on white supremacy, political corruption, economic malpractice. She used the pseudonym in order to not be criticized for participating in what was considered to be unladylike critiques of the political culture in Texas at the time. She wrote about women's rights, education, working to end Jaime Crow or Juan Crow, which is the Mexican-American equivalent of Jim Crow.
Jim Crow is the segregation society based on race, of public accommodations, of education, of institutions important to public life. Schools, water fountains, bathrooms, restaurants, etc. at that time would have been marked colored and white people.
Signs that stated no Mexicans or dogs allowed were everywhere.
In 1911, a 14-year-old Mexican-American boy was brutally lynched in Thorndale, Texas.
We have an understanding that a lot of African American men and some women suffered this horrific form of death. Less known is the unfortunate reality that ethnic Mexican men were also lynched. Some people were burned alive, dragged across town, really horrific ways of killing people, mutilating their bodies to intimidate ethnic Mexican people so that they would not vote, so that they would not complain.
In response, Idar and her family organized a conference that kick-started the modern Mexican-American civil rights movement.
The first Mexicanist Congress, El Primer Congreso Mexicanista, lasted several days, and it was basically a human rights congress that attracted leaders from the United States and Mexico who wanted an end to the discrimination and the lynchings.
Shortly after the Congress, Idar founded the League of Mexican Women and became its first president. The organization's main causes were women's suffrage and quality education for Tejano children.
We want our work to be significant, contributing to the formation of character and the cultivation of the minds of future generations.
One of the most significant roles that Jovita had was to invite ethnic Mexican women to participate in La Liga Femenil